So back to the gear. So you say good clothing, high quality shoes, and now firearm.
Yeah, firearms. So I carry a SIG P227, which is a 45 ACP. It's a double stack magazine, holds 10 rounds plus one, and I bought it when I arrived at Fort Hood, Texas in July of 2019. And that was my last duty station, the Great Place. From there I went to Germany, and but when I was at Fort Hood, I got married again, and I was forced out of the barracks because when you're married, you can't live in the barracks. Some people were allowed 2 weeks to get out, find a place. I was given 1 day, so I had to, and we were on orders to go to Illesheim, Germany. My entire unit was, so I had to find a place quick and get ready to get on the C-130, which would take us to a certain airport, which would then take us on a civilian plane across the ocean. I think we were going to go to England and then from England to Germany.
So you got to move out before you move out.
Exactly. And it was chaos. So I found this cheap apartment. I'm going to call it out. It's called the Highlands at Spectrum in Killeen, Texas. Apartment 317. It's haunted as shit.
Oh, yeah? What happened there?
Oh, man. So, but before I talk about the ghost story, I was there for the second night and I was talking on the phone with my wife and I was kind of just venting about how stressed I was, and I had to do an NCOER, and I had to talk with our sergeant major about vehicle inspections because our unit already put all of our BII inside of the containers, but we had a vehicle inspection. All our BII is in containers, and it's already zip-locked, that's tagged, it's ready for deployment, it's about to go to the rail yard, which we're driving it to the rail yard, and they want to do a vehicle inspection. How? It just didn't make sense. Anyway.
Incompetence.
That's
how.
Yeah.
We had to download other people's connexes and take inventory of other people's stuff all the time. They're like, oh, scouts? Oh, you're not doing anything today? Oh, come on down to the motor pool and see if you can find this in the connex. Take inventory.
Oh, it's terrible, especially when they tell you that, like, oh, this one's filled with like radios, and you open it up and it's just filled with like, I don't know, like chains and just BII. And you're like, oh, it's not this one. We have to break this one open now.
Yeah.
It's just horrible, and there's no ventilation in those connexes.
Nope.
But like as soon as I was talking with her and I was just kind of venting about the day and what I had to do the next day, a bullet went through my window and it clapped the brick above me, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna go buy a pistol tomorrow. Turns out there was a 14-year-old kid who was living in the apartment complex. He got an AR-15, and he wanted to impress this neighbor girl of his. So she was walking with her boyfriend, and he went outside and fired it off. And one of the bullets went through my window, and it hit the brick wall above where I was laying in bed. And then he threw that AR in the pool, and it was there the next day.
The AR was still in the pool? It
was still in the pool. When I went to work the next day, I saw the AR in the pool, and I'm like, I bet that was what shot my window. And I don't understand how the police were not called. I mean, it's Killeen, Texas.
Which I've heard.
Yeah.
But it's off post.
It's off post, yeah. And I asked about the AR-15 because I was thinking about it all day. I'm like, I wonder if I can go get that AR-15. Like, I was thinking about it. I'm like, if it's still there in the pool? Like,
but if it's stolen, then you got bigger problems.
That's right. It probably was, and it probably ended up in a pawn shop if the police didn't come get it. But
yeah.
Yeah, I bought the SIG P227. It's a 45 ACP, and it came with 3 magazines. I was happy, and I still carry it to this day. They stopped making them in 2019. They made them from 2013 to 2019, so it's a discontinued model of SIG now, and I carry it usually everywhere I go. I'm a full-time bartender, so I don't carry it when I'm behind the bar.
So when you're traveling, though, when you're camping out and hunting for treasure, you have that with you?
I do. I'll carry the SIG P227, and I have a Winchester Model 97. It's a takedown model. Did you ever see The Mummy with Brendan Fraser?
Yeah.
That's the shotgun I have.
Okay.
It's in my Jeep right now.
And so those are you carry those two all the time when you're going?
You can fit
even
that,
if you're backpacking?
Exactly. Yeah, because if I'm going to a place where I'm going to be there for a day, I won't really take the shotgun. I won't take anything else besides my pistol. I carry a knife with me. It's a Moela Predator, and I carry the SIG P227, and I carry a folding knife, which is like a Benchmade. Mm-hmm. I think it's the Benchmade bushcraft knife.
Yeah, and the first knife is fixed.
Yeah, okay. First knife is fixed. I do a lot of my bushcraft stuff with the fixed blade, not the folding blade. With the folding blade, I use it to cook with and just do camp stuff.
Yeah.
But The Winchester Model 97, I'll break it down, put it in my hiking pack. If I'm going into Superstitions, the Winchester shotgun's coming with me. If I'm going into the Sierra Ancha Mountains or over by Bloody Basin area inside the Bradshaw Mountains, the shotgun's coming with me.
Why those second two places?
Because
the Superstitions is obvious to me.
Yeah, the Superstitions is a very beautiful place, very strange place. There are mountain lions in the Superstition Mountains. I see tracks of them all the time. But in the Bradshaw Mountains and the Sierra Ancha Mountains, there are black bear. There are a lot of them. And if you're walking through the area and you see like black cattle and stuff like that, that's nice. There was one time at a place, it's an old Apache stronghold. I learned the location of it. I spent all day driving to it, hiking to it. I think it was a 20-mile drive down a dirt road. And I parked. I had to hike a mile to get to this area, and then I had to hike uphill through manzanita thickets. It took me a couple of hours to get, it's a 400-foot rise to get to this Apache stronghold. And I got up there. I was beaten, cut up from the manzanita, and then I explored the stronghold. It was a very cool experience, very somber experience, because a fight did take place there between the U.S. Army and the Yavapai Apache. And the entire time I was up there, I saw Black Angus cattle, because most of Arizona is they got cattle everywhere. So as I'm hiking down, I'm seeing more cattle, and I'm going through the manzanita. I'm just getting my butt handed to me. And I get down to the creek, and I lean over, my pack's on, and I remember I took off my pack, I readjusted my shotgun, and I just pushed one part that, because it's a takedown model, I pushed it back down, resecured where it was, and then put my pack back on, and I looked up, and I saw a black butt through manzanita on the other side of the creek. And I was like, "Hey, cow." And then the animal turned around, and its face poked through the manzanita, and I said, "You're not a cow." And it's a black bear.
Oh,
it's about 40 feet from me.
Oh,
and
man.
It was let me see. It was about a little bit bigger than a German Shepherd.
Okay.
So it wasn't quite a cub, but it wasn't quite an adolescent.
Yeah.
It was not quite like a junior bear. I don't know the terms, but juvenile. It wasn't quite a juvenile.
So you think it could clear that 40 feet before you could draw and fire?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And I was not in any condition.
You're hiking through manzanita.
Yeah, and I was just defeated. It was the first snow of the winter at that point, so usually when I go into dangerous places where I know there's no cell reception, I know that if anything happens out there, I'm going to be in dire straits. I will pack accordingly. Logistics. And I was just defeated from that hill all day, climbing up, climbing down, going through all those thickets, and then I see the black bear, and I think, it's one of those moments where I'm like, this must be how I die.
Mm-hmm.
And the bear went to the north, I went to the west, and that's how that situation ended.
Nice.
So I've run into every type of animal encounter you can think of except for the black panther and Bigfoot.
Mountain lion.
There's a camp on Mingus Mountain that I go to. I'll be actually there tonight. I call it Cougar Camp because there's a mountain lion that lives on this hillside. It doesn't hunt there. This is what I'm figuring out about mountain lions, is that I see tracks there all the time. They're very fresh. There's a old mine from the 1800s there. There's an old cabin from the 1800s, and when it rains, there's thousands of buttons from this place, from the 1800s up until the 1900s, and they're all incredibly rare buttons. And I have permission from the landowner to be there and metal detect and stuff, and hunters go on the property. And I found carcasses from hunters, deer carcasses from hunters, but not mountain lion kills. So I know the mountain lion's not hunting there.
So they're shooting the deer and they can't track it or can't find it?
I think they track the deer to the property, and then they'll cut off the antlers. Because when I walk up on the deer and I see the antlers are cut, I'm like, okay, a hunter got it. And the coyotes didn't rip it apart. And I see, it's butchered, but...
Oh, it's butchered?
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay.
The carcasses I found were butchered by people, and then they cut the antlers off. But no carcasses from a mountain lion kill. But I was talking to my girlfriend one night, just on FaceTime, like I'll do tonight, and the sun had just set, and I turned on my lantern, and I said, "Good night, I love you, I'll see you tomorrow." And as I ended the call, pushed end call, and it said end FaceTime, I saw something reflecting back at me just about 30 feet away. And I look over and it's two eyes. And I just turn up the lantern. And then I stood up and the eyes stood up with me. And that's when I think I said, "Oh no." Like, "Oh no." And my pistol was on this little table next to where I was, but it was like 2 feet over. So I went and grabbed it, and the eyes did like a left-handed curve downward. And I was like, okay, so I'm not gonna. A lot of times I sleep out in the open, just under the stars, and I'll have a cigar and I'll sip some whiskey and just listen to music or put on a movie on my phone and just go to sleep or something like that.
Mostly sleeping on the ground or hammock?
Yeah, hammock if there's trees available that will support the hammock.
Yeah.
But usually just on the ground. And that night when I saw that, I'm like, I don't know what that was. The eyes were kind of like a cat. So I'm like, I'll go in the Jeep. So I slept in the Jeep that night. And the next morning I woke up and I played a game I love to play. And that's track what was tracking me.
Huh.
So, and it was a mountain lion paw that was about 4 inches in diameter.
Ooh.
And I got to see.
It stood up?
It stood up like cats do that. Like house cats, like they'll stand up.
Yeah.
That had to have been what it did. Because I saw where it was perched and watching me.
Oh, maybe it was in the prone.
I think it was like in the prone and it was like crouched down.
Yeah.
And then when I stood up, like it stood its head up.
Oh, okay. So it might have been about to pounce.
It might have been. Because I was at a pretty steep grade and it was down from me.
Okay.
And another day I went back up there because
before you go on, how do you have that happen? Oh wait, you didn't know that it was mountain lion until the next morning?
when I saw the tracks.
How do you go to sleep after something like that?
Well, I was in my Jeep, so I felt secure. And but if I'm in a place where I have to leave my Jeep and I have to hike into a location, it's just nervous sleep. You're able to go to sleep, but you're not quite in a deep sleep state. Noise wakes you up, and your adrenaline will wake you up. But another time I went to the same place, and I was on the phone with my girlfriend again. I think I wanted to go up there and just check out a spot real quick because I saw an old road from way back in the day. Yeah, the same spot, and I got out of my Jeep, and I wasn't there maybe a few minutes, and I heard a loud pop of a stick breaking. And then I said, I'm going to call you back. And I just stood there for a little bit. I just listened to the surrounding and just kind of looked around a bit. And then I walked to where the stick was, where I heard the stick break. And I saw those same tracks. And I followed them. And in the short time I was there, just a few minutes, that mountain lion had completely circled my Jeep. It was probably maybe 60 feet away. And it's the size, a little bit larger than a German Shepherd. And you can gauge an animal by its size, by its tracks and its stride.
The distance between the prints.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So if you are walking with your dog in sand, you can practice this. Most of the best trackers I've ever known are self-taught. It starts with your pets, just walking behind your pets. And you can start to gauge the size of the animal by that. And if you work on a cattle ranch, same thing. You know, you can follow fresh tracks. You can see old cattle tracks versus new cattle tracks. But yeah, it completely circled my Jeep. And somehow it stepped on something or it slipped and a stick broke.
I doubt it slipped.
Right.
Those things are creepy, man.
And they are. And I was doing a Facebook Live one night. I would get off work, and when there's no wind blowing, I'll shoot up the mountain, and I'll go to Cougar Camp, and I'll do a Facebook Live. I call them campfire stories. I'm starting to do them on YouTube now. And it's kind of taken off. I've gotten really good results in doing the campfire stories. And one of the nights I was finishing my Facebook Live of doing campfire stories just to test it out, see if it would work, see what kind of responses I would get. You could see two eyes reflecting from the firelight behind me. So it was getting closer. But the thing is, like, it's not purring, it's not puffing, it's not growling. I don't know.
Just checking things out.
Yeah, I'm not claiming at all to be like a mountain lion whisperer. It's probably just curious about me, but
yeah, same guy multiple times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thought about me leaving a box for the cat to play with. I don't know.
There you go. Big giant ball of yarn.
But it's my cougar camp, and there's a couple of places where the Yavapai Apache actually had lookouts in that area. So, like, the Apaches did have smoke signals. Different smoke signals meant different things. And where that cougar camp is, next to that old mine from the 1800s, is a couple of lookout spots from the Yavapai Apache. And just to the north of that spot is a cave where an event took place which led to the Battle of Turret Peak. A U.S. soldier was captured at a camp where some Yavapai Apache attacked him and his companions in the night. 2 of his companions were killed. He was captured and drugged to the cave, and he was tortured throughout the night. The Yavapai Apache shot him with arrows in non-vital locations. They would cover him in cactus and light him on fire, and they did this all night long. Well, in the morning, some soldiers out of Fort Whipple saw the events of the night, and then they tracked him to that cave, and his name was Taylor. He was like a 19-year-old soldier, just a kid, and he said what happened, and then that news got to...
The kid was still alive?
He was barely alive, and he died with the lieutenant, and then that news got to Camp Lincoln, which is now Camp Verde, and then that led to the Battle of Turret Peak, and after the Battle of Turret Peak, that ended the Yavapai Wars in the Verde and Prescott area.
Where's Turret Peak?
Turret Peak is down Bloody Basin Road. It's called the Black Hills area.
Is that east or west of the 17?
That is east of the I-17, west of the Verde River.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love this stuff. Like Arizona history.
Yeah.
One of my favorite subjects. Have you spent much time on the Mogollon Rim?
My girlfriend loves camping on the Mogollon Rim. Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Oh, I love it. I'm a desert boy.
Yeah.
I love the heat. I enjoy the winter time, but I really love the heat. I love the summer. I love the desert. I love being able to see everywhere. And being in the trees, it's a little kind of eerie to me because I can't see that far. But it's very cool. The first time I camped this year on the Mogollon Rim, my girlfriend talked me into it, and a bull elk walked right into our camp. I got pictures of that on Instagram and Facebook.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we were within 20 feet of that thing.
That's scary.
Yeah. And it just walked around my Jeep in our tent, and it just grazed. It never postured in any way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
Right
it's
on.
a really beautiful place. There's a few lost treasures on the Mogollon Rim, and there's a battle up there that took place also.
I found a headstone up there once from somebody from 1800s, I believe it was marked, and it was cavalry, some kind of cavalry headstone.
Yeah, General Crook had a trail going from Camp Verde all the way to the Payson area. That was first started off as a mule train route, then a wagon road, and then the military patrolled it. So it might have been someone who died along the trail going from their winter camp to the summer camp.
It went up over the rim, that trail did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it could be Trail 300.
It could be. Every 5 miles, there's a V marker, which is like 5 miles. It's just a V, like Roman numeral 5.
Mm-hmm.
That the U.S. Army would carve to mark General Crook's trail. And on the Mogollon Rim, there's a battle called the Battle of Big Dry Wash, which took place. That was the last battle of the Apache in northern Arizona. And it was a U.S. Army victory. It
Wow.
could have been a soldier who died from that battle.
That's awesome. Have you been in any of the canyons up there?
Small ones. I haven't really been too far from camp because when I'm camping on the Mogollon Rim, I am the laziest person.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're on vacation.
Yeah, I'm on vacation. I'm not
Right on.
like really doing a whole lot of exploring. I'll like be making bows and arrows and taking naps, reading books, waking up from taking naps, and yeah,
That's a good place to do that.
yeah. It's really peaceful, really cool.
There's one of those canyons in there. It's 28 miles long. It's West Clear Creek. And about halfway down, or a little more than halfway down that 28-mile length, there's apparently ruins up in the cliffside. They call it a castle, but I'm skeptical that it's really resembles a castle. But apparently it's some kind of Native American ruins from the Sinagua Indians
Okay.
that inhabited the area. At least that's what the Spanish called them.
Yeah, Sinagua means without water.
Mm-hmm. But there's a spring. There's a 24/7 spring in this canyon It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, man.
And that's what creates it adds into West Clear Creek that filters into the Verde River, which is crazy because that drops all the way down by the Salt River that near that cattle ranch that you were talking about earlier, that 33 square miles, the East Valley.
Yeah.
That water goes all the way. That's crazy.
That's a long way.
It is, yeah. But I followed all of the water channels once from the Verde going up to the ones that feed into them, like Oak Creek. Mm-hmm. You can try and find the headwaters of Oak Creek, and then up in Paulden you have headwaters of the Verde River, I believe.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's just cool to see that like the water travels so far.
It is, and up those canyons, it's pretty isolated, to say the least. Mm-hmm. So if you're camping out there, you are alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that Mogollon Rim area has become kind of popularized over the past decade or so, but
it is.
Yeah,
there was one time I was camping it was the western part of the Mogollon Rim, and I was on leave from Fort Hood, and I went along Mogollon Rim, and it had just rained. It was the summertime, and I set up camp, and my dog Hunter and I were just enjoying the evening, lit up a cigar, and I kept hearing like thwacking sounds coming from the woods, and then like weird noises, and it was really annoying more than curious or creepy. And so moon was out. I love hiking at night, so I'm like, come on, boy, let's go check this out. So I had a flashlight with me, a bright little like a stream light, like 600 lumens or something like that.
Those are great.
And I walked up on some good old boys, like a half mile away from me, that were they had some like floodlights on in different directions.
Harvesting firewood?
No, they were smacking trees with 2x4s, and they were blasting on a megaphone gorilla noises, and they were calling Bigfoot. They were looking for what was known as the Mogollon Monster on the Mogollon Rim.
You know the history of the Mogollon Monster?
Not really, but this was my first introduction to the Mogollon Monster. At first I'm just like, hey, don't shoot. I'm a person. Like, I am here. Don't shoot. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you coming out of the darkness? I'm like, why are you guys being weird? But they told me they're Squatch hunters, like they're Bigfoot hunters, and they're out there calling in Bigfoot. And if you smack, they call it tree knocking. If you knock this 2x4 on a tree, it's going to echo, and the Bigfoot will mimic that sound. And if you call to them using like whatever ape noise they were using, that they'll answer that.
That's hilarious.
And eventually I was like, well, I'm going to go back to my camp now. If you shoot, don't shoot that way.
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Are they local guys?
They were from the Phoenix Valley, so like the Salt River Valley.
Okay, so they're not really Squatch hunters.
I don't know if we released an orangutan or a silverback gorilla into the Superstition Mountains, I'm pretty sure it would die.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if a Bigfoot would survive in the Arizona desert. Maybe the Mogollon Rim?
I don't think there's enough forest that's not inhabited here. Because I know there's a lot. It's the largest ponderosa forest in the world. Mm-hmm. But if you think of this compared to like the Pacific Northwest,
yeah,
vastly different.
Oh, it's totally different. So that's like a rainforest, technically, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can see through the trees here. Yeah. These trees are mostly far enough apart. At least all the places that I've been in the forest, they're far enough apart to be able to see. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Northwest, it's very, very thick.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My guess is that if Bigfoot is real, Bigfoot doesn't live in Arizona.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Yeah, but they were sold on it.
Did they say that they've like heard Bigfoot call back before with the ape noises or anything?
Oh yes, it was a group of about 14 people, husbands and wives, and they had kids there, and they were like,
oh wow.
Some women were talking about their experiences when they were kids and in Flagstaff having Bigfoot encounters and stuff, and I'm like, this is interesting and great, but I'm going to go back now. But yeah, that's when I realized people were looking for a Mogollon monster.
Yeah,
the Mogollon Rim.
You didn't join their cult, huh?
No, I didn't. It was interesting. Now, going back to the Skinwalker stuff, after I made a YouTube video about my Skinwalker encounter at Watson Lake, I got an email a message on YouTube from person named Josh. And I'm not going to say his last name, but he said, here's my phone number. I am a skinwalker. I want to talk to you. And no joke, I told my girlfriend I'm reaching out to this guy today because I want to interview him.
Did she freak out?
She didn't freak out.
Cool.
Like Josh Skinwalker is his name. That's the text message I sent him this morning because he messaged me saying that I watched your YouTube video and I want to tell you what you witnessed and like describe the meaning behind the person, the dog, and the bird. And I want to let you know like the meanings behind them. And when someone messages you and says that they're a skinwalker, I was like, you have my attention.
Yeah, that's a really easy one because they either prove it or they're full of shit.
Yeah, and I was like, well, to be a skinwalker, don't you have to kill a member of your own family or something like that?
Is that right?
That's like the Navajo lore and stuff like that. Like they're witches. Like they have to kill a member of their own family to become a skinwalker. And he said, as an apprentice of being a skinwalker, you have to sacrifice some things, but you don't have to kill anybody anymore. But you can bewitch people. And it was, I think, an hour and a half conversation on the phone. It was the most interesting conversation I've ever had with a total stranger over the phone.
Do you believe him?
I believe he believes it.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
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 I know some people like that. Yeah. So you're hoping to meet this guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure there's going to be some sort of like fine print in the Skinwalker contract that says you can't show people your powers.
I'm pretty sure I would love to see it.
Like I don't mean to degrade anyone at all, but like that's quite a claim.
Yeah, because I asked him, I'm like, so you're an apprentice skinwalker. Does that mean you guys get together? And he's like, no, we're not like a cult. We don't get together and like drink infant blood or anything like that. We just, we're very individualized. We're scattered. And we help the community in dark ways.
Do you have an example?
I don't remember because this was like in 2018. I talked to him on the phone after he wrote me that message on YouTube.
Oh, wow. So this is reaching back. So 5 years.
Yeah, because my marriage was not good. It was very rocky, and that was a relationship I never should have gotten involved in. I'm happily divorced 1 year now. So
Congrats.
Thank you. The 14th of October was my 1 year divorce anniversary. So like, I'm so happy.
My 5 year mark was like a month ago.
Congratulations.
And it's like, I had this terribly difficult relationship. My best friend asked me 2 years into the relationship. He was like, man, how long are you going to put up with this? And I said, man, I'll give it 5 years. And then ended up having a kid. And then finally that 5 year mark hit like a month ago. And I'm like, oh, I feel free. I'm good.
You're good.
I'm good to go.
Once that veil's lifted, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, man. I know.
Any chupacabra stuff going
I've
on?
never had a chupacabra encounter. I've run into a lot of mangy dogs on the reservation, and I ran into a lot of like, I guess, dumped dogs from the Phoenix area, but never a chupacabra. But I have run into people that were in the Superstition Mountains looking for a lost crystal skull that someone said was in a crevice. I've ran into a bunch of people looking for treasure vaults in the Superstition Mountains.
Have you corroborated any of their claims?
No,
Okay.
none of them. Because I researched colonial Spanish, Spanish colonialization, Spanish military conquest, and then the mineral exploitation of those conquests of that land. So everything I research is very much by the book, according to the Spanish crown, and then military documents, correspondence between Presidio commanders or even Apache War military commanders, ranchers. And ranchers today have some of the best information because they're all over that land.
Yeah.
So I'm a very practical person. You know, circumstantial evidence does hold up in court of law. Like if it's not actual like hard evidence, circumstances do fit together at some point. So treasure hunting isn't all about facts. It's about piecing the stories together, and ranchers help you do that.
Awesome.
But with chupacabras, I haven't run into much of that. I have run into lost people in the Superstition Mountains and guided them back on the right path.
Really?
Yep, elderly people, believe it or not.
No.
Like people who join these they're like retirement tourist groups. Like they dump buses of people off of the Superstition Mountains at First Water Trailhead, and then like they're
It's a sacrifice.
oh my gosh, how dark.
Sorry.
Yeah, First Water Trailhead, it takes you you can start there and go anywhere in the Superstition Mountains. And that's usually where I park and where I set off from, because it's just an easy trail. And then I branch off at a certain point and I go to my little valley and I do my treasure hunting there. I do some YouTube videos. I do some exploring. I might bring a spirit box with me at a couple of like haunted places.
A spirit box?
Yeah, it's called an SB11 spirit box. It's kind of, if you ever watched Ghost Adventures, those paranormal shows, it's that machine that goes and then a voice will come through.
I don't know of that.
Yeah, it's like
I've watched those shows, but I don't know this device.
I used to be the head tour guide for the entire town of Jerome, Arizona for 3 years, and so I know all of Jerome, Arizona's dark, morbid, debauchery history. And being a tour guide, I got a lot of free like ghost hunting equipment. I have an SB11 spirit box, the SB7.
Was this before or after you didn't believe in anything?
This is after,
Okay.
much after. This is after I got out of the Army. That's the first job I got when I got out of the Army. I moved to Clarkdale, Arizona. And I'd never been to Clarkdale before, but I knew Jerome's history. And then during the interview, I just spurted off some stuff, dark, morbid things about Jerome. And they said, "You're the most sober person we've had all day. You're hired." And so I got the job. And within a year, I was the head tour guide for the company. And I took out some ghost hunting equipment that was assigned to me. And I ended up buying it from the company. So I have like the SLS camera that was made by one of my guests that I took out on tour in Jerome. And SB11 spirit box. And so I'll go to some haunted places in the Superstition Mountains, the Bradshaw Mountains, the Mazatzel Mountains, or the like the Weaver Mountains by Rich Hill and stuff like that. And or even like the Santa Rita Mountains down by Tucson. Turn it on and you'll just hear like hello. Like it's, if you watch Ghost Adventures, you'll see that piece of equipment. And it's pretty creepy. I turned it on at a ruin along Coon Creek in the Sierra Ancha Mountains, where the fight took place between the settlers and the U.S. or the settlers and the Apache, and all I got was a scream coming out of it. It's a pretty creepy piece of equipment.
How is this thing built?
I couldn't tell you that.
You don't know how it works?
It scans radio frequencies. So there's an AM and an FM radio in there. There's two scanners, and it can scan forward or reverse at the exact same time, AM or FM, depending on which one you want to do. You can do both, AM on going forward, FM going backwards, and you can set it up to the sweep rate, so how fast it scans. I set it up to go forward and backwards the exact same time at the fastest way possible. So it blocks out all of the radio stations, every word that comes through. So like if you put it on FM going forward, you're going to get like, it'll say like Honda,
Okay.
Superstition.
Okay, so it's scanning. When it's scanning, it's talking like when you hit the scan button in your car, it goes from this station, then waits 3 seconds, then goes to the next station, stuff like that.
It's like the seek button in your car.
The seek, that's the one.
That's right, yeah. And that goes about 50 scans per minute. I put it at 300 scans per minute going forward and reverse the exact same time. And if it's going forward, I'll put it on AM. If it's going backwards, I'll put it on FM. And I'll do it at 300 scans per minute, so that way there's no chance of any commercials coming through or words from a song like AC/DC or anything like that coming through, or Metallica.
Yeah.
It's just and then you ask a question and then you get a response. Especially if you're in an area where there's no radio reception, no cell reception, it's even creepier.
Dude, that's weird.
Yeah. And I can only say, try it. Yeah.
Well, I don't have one of those, but I definitely sit and listen. So what's this other device you're talking about, a camera or something that
It's
somebody
the
built?
SLS camera. It's basically a Kinect, like with the Wii. So it like picks up on your body movements, and it depicts the human body moving by showing a stick figure on the screen. And being a ranch hand on a cattle ranch for the Turquoise Ranch, 55 square mile cattle ranch, I brought it out to the old ranch headquarters where 2 murders took place. A man killed his wife, and then a few years after that, a man killed his best friend while being drunk.
The same man?
I think it's different owners of the ranch. It has the best well in the area, so our ranch still used its well at the time, even though the place was abandoned and looted. I took it into that place, and I've shown that SLS camera, pointed it at horses, cattle, dogs, cats, rattlesnakes, and people, and it only shows stick figures when you point it at people because it picks up, it knows the human body, the dimensions, and so it's designed to pick up on the human body moving so it could perform its job, like with the Wii and play tennis and bowling and stuff like that. That's what it's designed to do. If you point it at a cow or a bull or a horse, it's not going to show a human figure. It's not going to pick up on it. But when you're in an abandoned place and you're shining that thing around and it picks up on a stick figure, it's very interesting.
Interesting is a word.
Yeah.
That would freak me out, man. If I was by myself, I don't know what I would do. I'd get the hell out of there.
I don't know. That's probably why I'm usually single and I don't have a lot of friends.
Maybe you're the haunted one.
Maybe.
There's no way to verify it.
I do have one story of something attaching itself to an artifact. My first wife, the police officer I told you about, the dirty cop, before our divorce, I filed for divorce on our first anniversary. Most romantic thing ever.
I was just going to say, that's romantic.
Yeah, I know, right? She wanted to go to the place where I spent 58 days. She's not a desert person. She's not a camping person. And I took her out. I showed her the site. She was miserable the entire time.
How long were you out there?
One day.
She's a cop. Come on.
I know. I know. And she was so exhausted and tired and overheating just from, it's like a 3-mile hike in to where the artifacts were found. And that was the last time I had permission to be on the land because that was the last time I ever saw the owner, and he passed away. And he gave the land to his children, who subdivided it and sold it off individually to other landowners. And then it's been for sale, resold, purchased, resold like 4 times over the past 10 years.
That's too bad.
Yeah. I don't think the new owners know what's on their property. I'm pretty sure they don't. But, yeah, my ex-wife, she was so mad. She was so miserable. And we finally get back to the Jeep, and she's like, I'm taking you back. Like, we're done with this. Like, you're not having fun. I don't think you were paying attention when I was describing stuff because, you know, like, you're overheating. You're getting heat exhaustion. Here's some water. Like, let's go home. And then we're driving back. She drinks some water, and then she's like, let's go hike that hill to that cave up there. I was like, are you sure? She was like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, okay. So we get out. We hike this ridgeline, which I had never been up before. And vortex story along with this. We're on that ridgeline. We're going up to this cave. I've seen this cave thousands of times. Never hiked to it because I'm like, why would I hike to that? It's way up there. It's away from all the water. It's so high up. I can look through my binoculars and see there's no ruins in it, so I'm not going to go to it. And
what area is this?
This is the Sierra Ancha Mountains.
Where is that?
So that's pretty much Roosevelt Lake.
Okay.
It's a huge mountain range.
So yeah, so you could find a pretty high cliff.
Oh yeah,
there's a cave.
There's caves and alcoves all over the place.
Okay.
And that's where the Apache chief Deschle had his stronghold, was in the Sierra Ancha Mountains. If you were in the Sierra Ancha Mountains between 1850 and 1870, it was probably the most dangerous point for a white man in Arizona, was to be in that mountain range. But we're hiking up this ridgeline going to this cave, and I have to go to the restroom. So I say, I'm going to be right back, and my dog Hunter's with me. And he ends up running back to Kendall, the dirty cop, and I go to the restroom. I come back. This ridgeline is like, I don't know. It's not very wide. It's about as wide as this cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes about 400 yards, about a 30-degree angle going up. It's like a draw. And I hike back, and I'm just calling for my wife. I'm like, hey, Kendall. Like, hey, Hunter, come here, buddy. Come on. And they're like, there's no dog, there's no wife. And I go down the entire ridgeline. I go up the ridgeline. I'm looking on the east side. I'm looking on the west side. I'm like, they're not down in the gorge and they're not down in the canyon. I hike all the way up to where I was. And I'm like, where are they? And this must have been about like, I don't know, 10 minutes had gone by. And then all of a sudden my dog just runs up to me panting. And my ex-wife, she comes around the bushes just yelling at me. Where were you? Where were you? I'm so freaking scared right now. Don't leave us out here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I've been looking for you. Something happened. She couldn't find me. I couldn't find her. And we're on the same ridge line. We both went up and down. And it's not very wide.
Yeah, pretty hard to confuse that.
Yeah. But anyway, she wanted to go out there because she wanted to find a piece of pottery. I can spot pottery everywhere. If you've been to any one ruin one time, you're able to distinguish pottery from a rock. And she wanted to find her own piece of pottery. And she would hand me rocks and be like, is this it? I'm like, no, that's shale. No, that's sandstone. No, that's granite. That's petrified wood. And she hands one thing to me, and I hold it in my hand, and it's curved. And I flip it over and I see the front of it, and I'm like, you need to put this back. Where'd you find this? And it's the frontal lobe of a skull. It's the seam. The seam?
Yeah.
Like on the front of the skull. And she's like, I found it right over there. I'm like, well, whatever it is, you put it back, because this is old. And it's very smooth. I don't know why it's smooth and why it's so glossy, but you need to put it back. And so she's like, fine, whatever. And so like...
She didn't know.
She didn't know. And I'm like, that's definitely not pottery, but let's not mess with that. Let's put it back. And so she motioned as if she was going to go put it back. And then we started.
She hid it and took it with you?
She did.
Dude.
The dirty cop took it.
Go
the
figure.
piece of the human skull from the ridgeline. She took it.
Oh,
and 2 nights later, like a cliche scene out of a cliche movie, I get home from work early at 1 a.m. I come home and she's in bed with her police sergeant. In my bed that I bought. I bought that mattress. It was a $3,000 mattress. I loved that mattress.
Glad they were comfy.
I know. I had to throw it away after that.
Oh, that's tough.
You can wash away the stain, but never the memory.
Yeah, which is the same.
Yeah. It's horrible. So it was a Kingsdown mattress. I loved it. And so I caught her with her police sergeant and kicked her out that night. That was our first anniversary, and filed for divorce that day. And when she left, I noticed on the coffee table, after all of that turbulence, she left the frontal lobe of that skull on the coffee table. And that night, the next night, I go to work, I come back because I work the graveyard shift, and my dog wouldn't go into the bedroom. He would just growl at the bedroom. I'd be like, Hunter, come on. I'd get his little duck squeaky toy and try to motion him in there, and he wouldn't go in there. So I'm like, okay, we'll sleep in the living room. And so we did, and slept part of the day in the living room, and then get ready. I'd take my dog with me to work, and then I remember someone called me. I think it was my mother or someone called me, and I had it on speakerphone, and I said, I have to go to my Jeep real quick. I'll be right back. And my dog went with me. And when I came back, they said, who's with you? I said, what do you mean? They're like, someone was opening and slamming your fridge. I can hear the bottles clanking in your fridge. And I'm like, what do you... Because I had a friend who was at Fort Bliss at the time. I was on the IRR, the Indian Active Ready Reserve. And my father had passed away. And so my buddy came out, and he's a beer drinker. I'm not a beer drinker. So he left his beer bottles in my fridge. And while I was going to my Jeep, my mother or whoever was on the phone was saying they could hear the beer bottles clanking as someone was opening the fridge and slamming the fridge while I was gone. And so I went to work that night, came back, and my dog wouldn't go into the apartment. And so we went and slept in the Jeep. And then when the sun came up, we went back into the apartment and went back to sleep. I do my study stuff because I'm a huge treasure hunting nerd. I did my study stuff, maybe watched a documentary and read a book. And then I was getting ready for work, and it felt like a spider bite on my neck. Oh, thank you. And I remember swatting at my neck, and it started to burn really bad. And I had a flip phone. I didn't have a smartphone. This was like around the time that the iPhone 4 was coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, iPhone 4. It's like AOL dial-up like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. I had a 5. I think it was my first iPhone I had.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn, mine was the 4. I thought I was hot shit for having that. And I tried taking pictures with my flip phone, my Motorola flip phone, and I finally got one, and it was 4 symbols in the back of my neck.
What the
And
hell?
the thing is, I don't have those pictures anymore.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I sent them to my buddy from Fort.
I'm serious.
What the fuck was that?
What was that, man?
Fuck you, Siri.
Is Siri listening to us?
Apparently.
Siri, where's DB Cooper's money?
Hey, Siri. Where's DB Cooper's money?
The hijacker has never been found or identified.
Thanks,
In
thanks,
1980,
Siri.
a small portion of the ransom money was found along the banks of the Columbia River.
Shut up. Hey,
The
Siri.
discovery of the money renewed public interest in the mystery.
That was
It
kinda
yielded no
creepy.
additional information
What?
about the hijacker's identity or fate, and the remaining money was never recovered.
All right. Yeah.
This answer is from Wikipedia.
Well, that was strange.
That freaked me out. Okay.
Anyway.
I think what I said, are you serious?
Uh-huh.
And Siri replied,
Are you serious? And Siri doesn't really do that.
you have to say, hey, Siri, to get it to activate.
Yeah. I am sorry for bringing paranormal activity
No, you're
into your
good.
home.
It's not going to stay, I promise.
Hopefully it comes with me to the cougar camp.
No, hopefully not. Oh, we have different views on that maybe, but so this thing put
It was 4 symbols on the back of my neck, and I took it to work with me that night, and I showed it to the buddy of mine that I work with at the time, and we couldn't figure it out.
you showed the phone pictures to him or you showed your neck to him?
Well, both, because through the night it went from a bite, what felt like a bite, to a burn, and then by the morning it was cuts. Like, it was on my neck for a month. Like, you know how like if you cut yourself with a knife, it might take like a week or 2 to finally heal over or something like that. It was on my neck for a month. Even once, like, because it looked like as if a small knife had cut him, like a very thin, like a sharp blade had cut him. And the thing is, I only remember what a couple of them looked like. They kind of looked like runes in a way, but I can't really pinpoint which runes they were. Like, it looked like a line with a couple of lines, and then one had like a line with a pyramid, like a triangle on it. But I don't remember the layout of it.
So the pictures that you sent of them to other people, what happened to those?
I don't know if they still exist or not. They might still have them.
You have to ask.
I think there's my buddy from Fort Bliss might still have them. Eric, he might still have them. But things started escalating every single night. And I remember yelling at my apartment because my dog is like violently attacking something in my bathroom. Like, I'm getting ready to, like, I have to like force my dog into my apartment because I have to go get something for work. I forget what it was. And it was daylight. My dog's not going into the apartment. And I actually grabbed his collar and I was like, come on, just come on. Cause my leash is already in the Jeep. And I drug him into the apartment and he runs into the bathroom and it just sounds like he's attacking something. And so I yell at the apartment. I'm like, just stop and I'll take this back to the ridgeline. Just stop. And it never did. Like, for the next week, it was just getting worse and worse. I would wake up in the daytime to my dog laying on top of me, growling at something by the front door. And when he was with me at work, he would just sleep. He wouldn't do anything. He would just sleep.
So what are your feelings and sensations when this is happening? Are you getting chills? Are you getting goosebumps? Are you
Chills, goosebumps, and
are you like feeling terror in your chest?
There was a couple of times I walked into my kitchen with my pistol drawn because I knew someone was in there.
Yeah.
I remember I was cleaning my sunglasses and I noticed to my right there was a white light and it went up the seam of the wall and it went into the kitchen. And I thought, well, that's a fun hallucination. Like, what is that?
And you're not like a magic mushroom type of guy, are you?
No,
Okay.
I'm not in. I did like weed and chloroseine and cough and cold when I was like 18 and trying to be in a death metal band, but
Yeah, but
no.
you're not pinching off a quarter tab of acid every couple of weeks or anything.
No, I joke about it, but I've never done any hard drug ever in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up taking it back to the ridgeline, and I said, "I'm sorry she took this. Please stop. Like, I'm done." And I just walked away, and it never happened again.
That's amazing.
And it's still there. I've walked by and I've just seen it. It's still there.
I wouldn't go back.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did you happen to see if there were any other fragments of bone anywhere that you could tell?
I've never been able to pinpoint exactly where she found that. It's on that ridgeline somewhere. And the reason why it's glossy, I think, is from pot polish. So during the time of the Sinagua, the Hohokam, the Anasazi, the Puebloan peoples, the ancient Salado cultures, the Mogollon people, this was all during the apex of the Anasazi civilization. This went from 1,000 years ago to the year about 1400 was the last remnants of the Anasazi. And during the height of the Anasazi Empire is when cannibalism took place. And there's 7 signs of cannibalism. I can't remember all of them because I went to ASU for cultural anthropology. And there's cut marks and abrasions on the bones, just like butchering animals. If you're dressing a deer, you're going to have those same marks if you were dressing a human. Then there's scoring on the backs of the skulls or the faces because you're roasting the brain. There's pot polish, which is where...
What do you mean roasting the brain?
The brain is very rich in protein.
Okay.
Just like bone marrow.
Okay, so where do these marks come from in roasting the brain?
So they would scrape the flesh off of the skull, and then they would put the skull in the fire, and then the back of the skull would be charred.
Okay.
Because it's roasting the brain on the inside, and then they'll crack the skull open and then eat the brain.
Yeah.
And there's also bone fragmentation, so they would break apart the bones just like you would be breaking apart like a deer or an elk trying to get the marrow from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact same method if you're doing it to a human. And so the next one is pot polish, where you throw those bones into there and you're getting the remnants of all of the meat that won't come apart easily when you're dressing it. You just throw the bones in there, and all the marrow and all the meat will float to the top, and it creates like a foam, kind of like a, what do they call that? Tallow.
Mm-hmm.
And you could eat that. You can make beer out of it even.
Mm.
And then there's coprolite. Coprolite is human feces. There's a type of, I want to say chromosome. I haven't been to college in a long time, guys. I haven't been to ASU in a long time. Forgive me here. There's a type of DNA inside of human muscle tissue that can be traced when passed through the human body. You can find it inside of the coprolite, which is the human feces. So you can see that one DNA evidence has been ripped off of one person and passed through the system of another person.
And that's how you can tell that they ate a person.
Yeah. And when I was at ASU, dealing with cultural anthropology, I've handled pot polished bones. And so when she handed that to me, I was like, you need to put this back. And the thing is, if a deer gets killed and butchered out in the field right now, in 5 years, those bones are gone, just decomposed. I was so surprised that this pot polished skull fragment still looked glossy. I was so astonished. I don't know how it still survived. It must have been in an alcove protected by the elements is where she found it. Probably. There's alcoves everywhere in the Sierra Ancha Mountains. But I never was able to pinpoint where exactly she found it, and we weren't talking after that.
Yeah.
That night. So
That's okay. Good riddance anyway.
I know.
No. Well, that's pretty incredible and pretty scary. I'd go put that shit back immediately.
Yeah.
Have you ever found other bone fragments that are not the skull?
Well, I've found several different human remains throughout the years of treasure hunting and metal detecting and prospecting. By Vulture Peak, there's a little ghost town called Vulture City. Yeah, and it's by the Vulture Mine. There's a couple lost treasure stories about the Vulture Mine itself.
That's south of Wickenburg, southeast of Wickenburg.
That's right. I think it's
Yeah.
down Vulture Mine Road.
That's right. I've been on that road.
Yeah. And Ghost Adventures did an episode there.
Oh, okay.
I own a mining claim about a mile across from Vulture City. And my father and I, before he passed away, before I even joined the Army, we were dry washing. And that's using shovels to throw dirt onto a hopper. And the dry washer is using vibration, airflow, and gravity to trap the gold into recesses in the machine. And then you take those recesses out, dump it in a bucket, pan it out, and then you have gold. It's a type of placer mining.
Cool.
And I remember putting my spade into this bank of this dry riverbed. My dad grabbed my shoulder and said, "Son, stop." And I dumped it onto the hopper, and there's 2 rib bones, black cloth, and a button on the hopper of the dry washer, and we shut it off. And then we looked down at where I found it, and there's another rib bone sticking out, and we found a shallow grave. And then we found another one. So one of them was wearing a U.S. Army uniform because it was the U.S. Cavalry buttons. At least he was a veteran or an active soldier, but he was buried in a shallow grave, so who knows how he got there. But there was somebody else next to him who the only piece of metal they had on him was a belt buckle. And when you're metal detecting, sometimes you'll find human remains by the belt buckles, the buttons, or the brogans. So the brogans are the old types of shoes. It looks like a little horseshoe on the heel of the boot, and they have little hobnails, which were like the tread of the shoe.
Okay.
And those things can be picked up by metal detectors, and that's usually how I found human remains.
Wow.
From shallow graves back in the day.
So when you find these things, do you take the buttons or do you take the clothing?
We put everything back where they were.
Right on. Bad juju.
Bad juju. There's another instance where in Salado, Texas, I found human remains. I found a weird gold nugget in a creek, and I thought it was very strange. And then the next day, after, end of day formation, it was a Friday, we got our weekend safety brief. Don't do drugs, don't kill hookers, that kind of stuff.
Don't drive drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I shot over to, I went to my Jeep, put on my swimsuit, got my snorkel gear, and then drove to Salado Creek, started free diving at night, and I found a tag. Thought it was a dog collar. And then next day I looked it up, and I put vinegar on it. If you put vinegar on iron artifacts or brass artifacts that aren't really degraded, it cleans them up and it doesn't damage them, so you can actually read them.
Cool.
Just regular white vinegar. That's what I use. And it was a cremation tag.
Whoa.
And so I called the cremation place. It was Belton Crematorium. And they told me that the name was, his name was Whistler. I think it was Henry Whistler, John Henry Whistler.
I thought you were going to say your name for a second.
Oh my gosh, that'd be like an epic prediction. That'd be crazy. But he actually started the museum for Salado, Texas.
Oh, wow.
He was like one of the main founders of the museum, the main fundraiser people for the museum. And when he passed away, they threw his ashes in the creek right behind his house. And I found the gold crown of his tooth. And then a foot over, I found the crematorium tag.
Well, that sounds like good juju.
Right? And so right now, he's on display at his own museum.
No way.
Really? True
That's
story.
So cool.
Yeah.
Right on. I had a question about the Anasazi, or not a question, I guess a little story. One time I was doing what do they call it? A soul wander, or like a walkabout type of thing. It was a real miniature one. It was a day.
Yeah.
And I was out in Sedona, and I got this sense that like I could hear it, but it wasn't audible. Mm-hmm. I got the sense that I was hearing singing coming from this particular canyon that was a little ways away.
Yeah.
Because I was wandering, obviously. I was like, where should I go? And I was freaking start hearing like something singing me in to this canyon.
Yeah.
And the sense that I got that it was like Anasazi. And that was the only association that I got, and that it was ancient.
Yeah.
But it was like still there. And it was really weird because I ended up going into this place and finding a little cave and like having this experience, and it was trippy. So I was going to ask you if the Anasazi were in the Sedona area.
They were. That was a part of the southern edge of the Sinagua culture. The Sinagua, the Hohokam, the Mogollon people and the Salado culture are all subcultures of the Anasazi.
Okay.
They all mirror the Anasazi. Chaco Canyon in New Mexico is that's like the Mecca, the Jerusalem of the Anasazi world. And everyone wanted something of that religion.
So they spread pretty far west.
They did.
Wow. Chaco Canyon. There's a great documentary about that. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Very interesting.
I love it. I've been to Chaco Canyon a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you go in there? Can you go like into the ruins?
You can. Yeah. In a lot of them, you can.
Awesome.
Yeah, especially the big one, Pueblo Bonito.
Yeah.
But I think what you're referring to when you heard that stuff, it's called like historical acoustics. It's like echoes of the past. Events that had occurred that somehow, like a skipping record, but with a huge delay. You heard the events of something that occurred hundreds of years ago that replayed itself in probably the same circumstances. It could have been the same day, the same temperature, same time frame, and you just happened to be at the same place at the same time it happened hundreds of years ago. I think that's the theory.
That's a beautiful theory. I've never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense with resonance and the things that I've experienced some weird stuff with sound and canyons and nature and you know about the didgeridoo?
I wish I could play the didgeridoo.
Right on, man. You will. All right, so let me go through this list real quick, make sure I don't forget anything. What's your favorite piece of treasure that you've found?
Definitely the gold coins.
Okay.
From my 58 days. Those were the first gold coins I ever found and the only gold coins I ever found, and I found them all together in the same square foot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever hunted treasure outside of Arizona and I guess Salado, Texas?
Yeah, I've hunted in Salado, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgetown, Texas. Oh my gosh. So like in the Lampasas River in Texas, I swam with alligators. And that's where I found my first pistol ball in Texas was the Lampasas River.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, man. This is why I don't have friends.
That's hilarious.
Right?
So
I'm like, hey, like, what are you doing this weekend, Drake? Because like they call you by your last name in the Army.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Drake, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to go to the Lampasas. And like, I saw an alligator there the last time. They're like, dude, why do you want to die? I'm like, I don't plan on dying.
No.
Like, I know how to find them. I know how to avoid them.
Yeah.
But there's stuff in that river.
Yeah.
And in Texas, the laws are different. It's 95% of Texas is privately owned property.
Really?
Really. And so it's all private property. And so the waterways of Texas are open for recreation. So you can metal detect in any river in Texas.
Wow.
It doesn't matter where you are. You don't need permission because it's open for recreation. And metal detecting is a recreation. So if you want to treasure hunt in Texas, go to the rivers. But if you go to the Lampasas River, there's alligators in the Lampasas River. And I remember getting a hit on the metal detector, and because I was like snorkeling and I was holding the base of the metal detector because I didn't have an extension, and it was like a 8-foot hole, and I got a hit at the bottom, and I pulled the metal detector up and I looked at where it hit, and I said, okay. And I swam to the edge, put the metal detector on the bank, swam back. Well, I grabbed a rock, and I just kind of like forced myself up, went to that spot, held my breath, and I let the rock take me to the bottom. And when I hit the bottom, I grabbed a piece of bedrock and started fanning the bottom. And when you fan the bottom, the current of the river is going to take that turbidity and that debris, and it's going to take it away from you. So as soon as you fan that bottom, it's going to reveal what's underneath. I love treasure hunting in the rivers. It's my favorite type because the water helps you. It's your greatest tool. But all of a sudden, the sunlight went away, and I look up, and there's a 4-foot alligator.
Come on.
And it's going the opposite direction of the river current. It's swimming against the current as if there's no current at all. It was as if it was like ice skating in the water. And I don't know how long I held my breath, but I just sat there. I'm just like, oh man. I had no idea it was there. That was my first alligator encounter, was the Lampasas River in Central Texas, Bell County.
But not your last.
Not my last.
Come on. Holy crap.
Yeah, I'm from Texas, and I have a hard time pronouncing this river, the Llano River, Llano.
Oh, is it?
It's Llano.
Llano.
Llano. And it was like chocolate milk brown.
Oof.
After a flood. And there used to be a restaurant along the river in the 1920s, and it was a huge restaurant. A lot of famous people would go there when Hollywood was getting its start. And it had the finest sterling silverware in Texas. That was what everyone in Bell County was saying. and that it was at this bend in the river, and it's north of Fort Hood. Everybody, I'm gonna say Gainesville, and
Isn't Gainesville in Florida?
there's probably a Gainesville in Florida,
There definitely is a Gainesville in Florida. I
haven't
didn't know
been
there was
there.
one in Texas.
and I found the bend in the river, and there's like a quinceañera going on. There's like 1,000 people there, and they're all Hispanic, and so a boy accidentally got his ball away from him and went down the steep embankment, because most of the rivers in Texas are steep embankments, like they're pretty steep and covered in briars, and so the boy went into the briars to go fetch his ball, and I said, no, I'll go get it for you. And so the mother got the boy out of the briars, and I went down into the river, and it's chocolate milk brown. Remember that. And I feel that it's very rocky. There's large flat rocks everywhere in the river bottom, and in between the rocks is just like very silty sand.
And alligators.
And then I grabbed the ball, which is in the middle of the river, flowing down it. And as I'm shooting back across the middle of the river to the bank, something which is very long, very big, starts spinning in the water.
Like rolling?
Yeah.
Like the death roll. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
It got something.
Oh, wow.
And I must have been about 50 feet away from it.
Man.
And then that was the last time I went in the Llano River. Llano River?
Llano, yeah,
Llano.
Llano.
Yeah. That
That's
was the last
awesome.
time I was in that river.
Holy crap. What's the most valuable treasure that you've ever found?
The most valuable treasure I ever found was something I found in Salado Creek. And it's a spear point. I can't remember the time period it was made from, but it was a certain period of the Archaic period. And I found many different spear points in Salado Creek. I found the rim of a huge cauldron from the time like when mammoths were walking the plains and stuff like that. And the rims of that cauldron is on display in Salado, Texas right now. But the point I found, I took it to the curator of the museum. This was inside of the office of the gentleman I told you that I get all my maps from, all the old books and documents I get. This is inside of his study. We're all together in this room. And I say, like, look, there's one artifact I didn't put on display. And there was a couple artifacts they told me before the presentation, don't put these on display, because we can't stop trespassers if they know that this stuff was found here. So I didn't talk about them. And I won't go into any further on those. But there's one artifact I found. It was a spear point. And it was the most beautiful spear point anyone had ever seen.
Fully intact?
Fully intact. And I found it in a crevice. So it had been thrown. And it was straight down inside the clay. The clay is what protected it. And how I found it was Salado, Texas was a part of the Chisholm Trail, the cattle trail, which went from Bell County all the way up to Fort Sumner, New Mexico. And the TV series Lonesome Dove is based off of the Chisholm Trail, with Augustus McCrae and Woodrow Call and all that. Well, I found the squarehead nails from the buildings that used to be in Salado Creek. And then I was clearing out, and I would find some modern pocket change from tourists that have fallen out of their pockets while swimming. And they're mixed in with old artifacts like squarehead nails and old hatchet heads and stuff. And I'm just pulling stuff out of the clay. And then I feel a knife. I feel the knife blade. And I remember thinking to myself, I just found a knife. Is it a Bowie knife? I hope it's a Bowie knife. Or an Arkansas toothpick, like one like super rare knife. And I pull it out, and it's this blue flint stone spear point. And it was just so beautiful. It's flawless, and there's no reason why it should have survived in the conditions I found it in.
So why is it so valuable? How much is it worth?
I don't know how much it's worth, but the curator of the museum told me that if you put that on display, it will get stolen tonight, or we will have break-ins.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Because of its potential dollar value?
Dollar value and its rarity.
And its rarity because it's from the time when
It's pretty
the
old.
archaic time, is that what you said?
It's about 3,000 years old. So it's older than a couple of the pyramids in Egypt.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so I still have it. And I keep offering it back to the museum, and I get the same response. So
Have you tried another museum?
there's not a museum that would appreciate it.
I see.
I've reached out to a few of them, and they're like, we got points. But I'm like, can I show it to you? And they just didn't seem interested. So I still have it.
I see. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a Brown's Treasure in Colorado?
I don't think so. I'm not really familiar with a lot of treasures in Colorado.
Okay, I think it might have been a troll anyway. How do you navigate? And to preface this, I guess, if you're on a trail, that's pretty obvious. But
Yeah.
if you're looking for a certain spot that you find on a topographical map, do you use a GPS, or do you use compass and paper?
I use compass, paper, and the way you talk, you were military. So did you ever use like ranger beads?
Yeah.
So I use those to mark my
Your pace count
my pace count. Yeah.
and your distance.
Yeah,
You
so-
can determine, for those that don't know, you can determine how far you're walking based on a pre-established pace count. If you know what your stride is, then you know this many steps or paces equals this distance.
Exactly.
And there's certain things you have to make up for, like if you have to go around a boulder or whatever.
That's
so
right.
so that's how you do it? You do it the old school way.
Do it the old school way, and I do that to keep my pace count. Like there's two sets of beads. There's one for 1,000 meters, and then there's one for 100 meters, and then there's one for 1,000 meters. I think that's what it is. Like you move one bead down for every 100 meters, and then you transfer over to the next one, and that's 1,000 meters. And then 4,000 meters is 3 kilometers, something like that.
No, it's 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers.
Because 1,000 meters for every kilometer.
That's right.
Yeah, metric is super easy to use rather than. I don't know if you could. I don't know how you could do that in standard measurements.
I don't know, because like the Spanish league is usually 2.3 miles, but in Coronado's time or Espejo or Don Juan Onate, it was 3.5 miles, which is right around the same measurement of the ranger beads.
Yeah.
So that's why I use them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And also this tattoo, I use it at night.
I was going to ask you actually about that, if you use that. So he's got a tattoo on the top of his right hand that looks like a nautical compass, and it's got 2, 4, 6, 8 points.
That's right.
It's like an 8-pointed star with the circle around it.
Yes, there's.
How do you use it?
So I'm a huge nerd. I'm just the nerdiest nerd you could ever know. I do a lot of reading, and I'll dive from one book into another book. My studying is chaos, because I'll be reading like 3 chapters into one book that was written in like 1880, and then something in that book will make me dive to a book that was written in 1950. And this is all research references. And so one like person's personal journal of their life on the frontier would translate into something that was talked about in Coronado's expedition. And so I'll put those place names on maps. And the one thing that changes throughout time is place names. What stays the same is terrain features. And I take that information, put those on their maps, overlay those maps with our modern maps, and I find those terrain features.
Mad respect.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time.
It does.
And focus.
And then a lot of the readings I do, I've come across several things. One of the things was there was always reference to a tattoo and navigation, and it was always very vague, very vague. Then there was a Portuguese document I was reading where it talked about French corsairs were taking Spanish galleons off the Florida coast, and they would leave their ship and they might take the galleon rather than transferring all of that weight of gold and silver onto their ship. It was just easier just to take the galleon and leave the Spaniards with their own ship. But they would take onto their ship Spaniards with this certain tattoo because they were able to navigate. They might not have been able to like read and write very well, but they could navigate using this tattoo. I'll tell you how to use it. That portrait of you up there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pretend that's the North Star. That's Polaris.
Yeah.
That's true north, unwavering, unchanging.
Mm-hmm.
You take the tip of your middle finger, and the Moors invented this, by the way. The Moors were in Spain for 700 years.
Okay.
They navigate by stars.
And they were one of the two kingdoms that made that castle?
Well,
On the coin?
No, that was Castile and Leon. Those were two provinces in Spain which rebelled against the Moors.
Okay.
They led the resistance which pushed the Moors out of Spain.
Okay.
But the Spanish got this from the Moors. You take the tip of your middle finger and you touch it. It's got to be your right hand too. If you're I'll tell you.
Okay.
So
okay.
it's got to be. You got to. If you had
I'm
your
all-
right hand cut off, you can't do it very well.
I'm planning out my tattoo and everything.
So you take your middle finger and you touch it to the tip of the North Star to where it disappears, and then
Okay.
you back it up to where the North Star is at the tip of your middle finger.
Just barely visible.
Yeah, and it's horizontal. You take your thumb, you make it 90 degrees. You bring it down to the horizon line. The North Star is true north, unwavering, unchanging. Where your thumb touches the horizon, that's magnetic north. You move the compass over, the compass works.
Move the compass over where?
So where your thumb touches the horizon line,
Uh-huh.
that's where you point the
Magnetic
north,
north on the compass.
and that's how the compass works. That's how they were able to do so much with so little.
So what about people with different sized hands?
It still works. It's not an exact science, but that's how they were
But
able to navigate the.
It gets you close enough to be
Yeah.
able to navigate from. That's amazing.
Yeah, this is a lost art. Yeah. And I've used it on the cattle ranch at night, pushing Black Angus cattle with no moon, and I've been able to get back to the ranch headquarters by using this tattoo.
That's so cool.
Because once I find the North Star and I can find out magnetic north, I'll be like, okay, well, Winslow's that way. The ranch headquarters is that way. So I use this at night, especially in the Superstition Mountains. You can get disoriented in Superstition Mountains at night very easily. And if you're able to have this tattoo, you can figure out where. And the Big Dipper also points to the North Star too, but only at certain times of the year and night. So if you're at a point with the Big Dipper's below the horizon line and you're in the mountains, you can't see the Big Dipper, but you can still find the North Star, this tattoo will save you. And it'll help you out tremendously on your adventures.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That might be my favorite thing we've talked about.
Nice, right?
Because looking at maps and terrain association and finding my way, and
Yeah.
I'm like a map. I can't say I'm a map nerd because I don't know a whole ton about them, but I love looking at maps and trying to find, okay, this is where I was, this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
There's something that's really relieving and really calming to me about it. I love it.
And on these tattoos, the tattoo artist couldn't put all of the details of the compass on here, but there's about 34 points on it. And in order to be a captain in the English, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, or the Spanish navies, you had to memorize all of these points. And that's north, south, east, west, north by northwest, south by southeast, like all of this stuff. And so if you find carving where it says SSE, that's south, southeast. And if you have this compass and you just point it towards the north, it's going to tell you the direction they traveled
Yeah.
through these mountains here.
Sick.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place to treasure hunt?
I'm going to name off some places here. So,
Cool.
Salado, Texas, the Treasure Coast of Florida. That actually should be number one, the Treasure Coast from St. Augustine to Sebastian Inlet.
Okay.
And the Sierra Ancha Mountains, the Superstition Mountains, the Santa Rita Mountains, the Bradshaw Mountains. The Bradshaw Mountains has over 100,000 documented gold mines that have been abandoned. So it's very dangerous. Don't do it. Don't go in them.
Yeah.
But
I've heard some stories of,
yeah.
where to hide a body.
Oh, yeah. I've found vertical mine shafts that have 4 cars stacked inside of them where people have driven into them.
What?
Yeah. Like
The people went down with the car?
maybe?
I don't think
Or people just stole them and then drove them into them?
That sounds like teenagers.
I've got a picture of one.
Really?
Yeah, there's especially out in Wickenburg area, there's a lot of mines out there. And not a lot of them are fenced in. There's vehicles in them.
Yeah.
And they go from the 50s to the 70s. And then,
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But what was I going to talk about?
You were talking about your favorite places to treasure hunt, and you ended with the Bradshaws.
Oh, yeah, the Bradshaw Mountains. So if you, the 100,000 gold mines that have been documented in the Bradshaw Mountains, mined, claimed, and exploited, if you were in the 1800s, even 1899, if you had a gold mine that was producing 3 ounces of gold per single ton of earth removed from the mountain, it was able to cover overhead and payroll. 3 ounces of gold per ton of earth removed. if it dropped beneath that, it couldn't cover overhead and payroll. They would abandon it and then seek greener pastures. Today, all you need is a gold mine that produces 1 ounce of gold per ton of earth removed. And so that's why I go in a lot of these old mine shafts.
Very cool. And do you rappel down these things, or is it?
Some of them. I really don't like rappelling.
Yeah.
I've done a lot out of like Blackhawks and stuff like that, and I don't like it very much.
So these mines, these abandoned mines that you're talking about, are they just kind of tilted down and you're going down a slope?
I'd say the most that I've gone down into have been vertical shafts. There's a few that are like at 40-degree angles or 50-degree angles, and I just don't like going down them like that. I wait for the first snows of the winter before I go into them because there's no rattlesnakes.
That's good.
Yeah, that's why I wait for the first snow. When the first snows come, like when you see snow falling outside, just like Cody's out there.
Yeah. Nice. I have a question that's you probably answered already, and I don't know if it's even relevant at this point, but in case it is, what's the most historically relevant piece of Arizona history that you've found? I'm going to assume it's those coins.
It's those coins. This was colonial Spain for 300 years, and we haven't even been a nation that long yet. And trust me, I'm a huge American patriot. I love our country. I got our flag tattooed on my arm.
That's right.
And I just have such respect for the conquistadors and for what they did with so little and with no reinforcements. And they had to rely on their own intuition, and they had to put aside their own squabbles to pull together to survive. And they did that with everyone trying to kill them. So that's why I'm so passionate about the conquistadors and stuff. And the fact that I found a spot where a fight took place. I didn't find any human remains, though. Like, there's no bones. But I found their money. That's so weird. Like, that's like the one puzzle out of all that. Like, there was a fight, and they left their money, and they never came back for it. If they didn't die, why didn't they come back for it? There must have been some payroll or something like that, because everything was a barter society, and some of those coins were just sticking up. Pieces of them were sticking up out of the ground. It's so crazy.
That's wild. The last two I have are Canyon de Muerto.
Canyon de Muerto, yes. That's my favorite part of Arizona. It's the most beautiful part of Arizona, in my opinion. It's a tributary of Canyon de O.S.A.
That was my next question. It was about Canyon de O.S.A. It's a tributary, so it leads in or filters from Canyon de O.S.A.
That's right. And
how can you go there?
Can I pause? I have to go to the restroom.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Sorry.
So Canyon de Muerto, yes. How are you allowed access to Canyon de Muerto? Isn't it on the Navajo reservation?
It is. It's inside of Chinle.
It is inside of Chinle. Okay, yeah. So I know for Canyon de O.S.A., in order to go down there, I'm told you have to have a Navajo take you down there.
Yes, and there's an individual named Justin. He owns Justin's Horse Rentals, and he takes you on. You can do a vehicle tour of Canyon de O.S.A. He'll probably take you to a ruin, an Anasazi ruin called White House, and then they turn you around, or they could take you deeper in. But for going deep into the canyon, it's going to be on horseback.
Yeah, and White House is the famous picture that you see of those ruins inside of the cliff wall.
That's right.
That's the iconic one, and that's where that is in northeastern Arizona.
That's right. And in 2015, I went to Canyon de O.S.A. for the first time, and I went to Justin's Horse Rentals, and they knew I wanted to go to Canyon de Muerto. I wanted to go to Massacre Cave. They knew that. When we were on horseback, and we got to the ruin of White House, just beneath it, because it's on a cliff face. My guide asked me why I wanted to go to Massacre Cave. And I said, I want to see where the fight took place between the Spanish soldiers from Santa Fe and the Navajo there. And he didn't say anything. He turned around. We went back, and that was it.
He didn't take you to Canyon de Muerto?
No, we didn't even make it part way there, or halfway there. The Navajo are very taboo about death. They don't like being around death. Same with the Hopi. They don't want to be around it. They don't want to talk about it.
That's the reason they don't go up into White House, is because there were people who died there. So they just look at it from down below.
Mm-hmm. And so from 2015 until this very spring. This is 2023 right now. And I was with my girlfriend, and I think she left to go do something, and Canyon de Muerto popped in my head, and I'm like, I wonder if I can get a different guide. And I just started doing some research, found nothing. And so I looked up Justin's Horse Rentals, and if you pay the money, they take you there now. And so I hired a guide, and they took us down one of the twin trails. Twin trails there's a North Twin Trail and a South Twin Trail. These are ancient Navajo trails which the Navajo used for centuries going in and out of Canyon de Chelly. The U.S. Army never found them. The U.S. Army had to go to the eastern end of Canyon de Chelly to actually enter it.
From the mouth?
From the mouth.
Because Canyon de Chelly, if you haven't seen or been there, the whole surrounding area is like flat desert plain. You wouldn't know these canyons are there until you stumble onto the edge of it and you look down and it's green.
Yeah, it's like a paradise in there.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, really amazing. Yeah. I've only stood at the top edge. I've never been down inside there, but it's incredible.
Gorgeous. And there's ruins all throughout there. And that was the Navajo's stronghold, was Canyon de Chelly. And even if the U.S. Army was down in the canyon bottom, they couldn't get the Navajos out of those caves. And the Navajos were picking off the soldiers left and right. And if the soldiers did find a trail down, like an old goat path or something like that, the Navajos had little ramparts set up behind the trails at blind spots, like dead space. And they'd pick off the soldiers from the back going to the front. So that way they would shoot the person in the back, then the one in front of him, and so on and so on. So that way there would be no alarm made, or a very little alarm until it was finally called, but then they were gone.
Yeah. And that's with arrows.
That's with arrows, yeah. Very silent, stealth weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with Kit Carson. You know, Kit Carson.
I know the name.
He was a famous explorer, mountain man. And he joined the United States military during the American Civil War because he was living in Taos, New Mexico. And the Texas Confederates were coming through. They fought the Battle of Val Verde, which is now over by Las Cruces, New Mexico. And then they took Santa Fe. They abandoned, the Union forces abandoned Taos. And then Confederate forces took Fort Union, took all the supplies from the settler depot. And then the Battle of Glorieta Pass is where Union forces finally stopped the Confederate advance into Colorado. And General Sibley was defeated. He wasn't really defeated. He was just stopped, but he couldn't have the supplies to justify going any further. So he went back to Texas and was never able to go into New Mexico or Arizona again. But Kit Carson joined to fight the Texans, not the Navajo. But he was assigned after the Texans went back to Texas to fight the Navajos. This is during the American Civil War. And they were in Canyon de Chelly. And there's a place called, I think it's Fortress Rock. That's where the Navajos went up and hid. And the U.S. military couldn't get them down. And finally, the U.S. military abandoned the place, and they finally came down from it. I don't know how they climbed up there. If you look up Fortress Rock, it looks like the Twin Towers, but in Canyon de Chelly. It's incredible. But Canyon de Muerto is a place, there's a cave where Spanish forces out of Santa Fe in 1804, I could be wrong, 1804 or 1805, led a punitive expedition into Doneta, which is what the Navajo called their own land, Doneta, to take out a band of Navajos that were spearheading raids into Spanish Santa Fe. And they finally got some Ute scouts, which knew Canyon de Chelly. They knew where this stronghold was, and they led the Spaniards to it. But the Spaniards did a pincer movement. And a pincer movement is when you divide your forces to hit from two flanks. And they hit from the top of the canyon and the bottom of the canyon at the exact same time. There was a band of Navajos on top and inside of the cave. And so what Navajos were in the canyon, the cavalry, Spanish lancers, drove them up the cliffs. And when they got to the cave, the musketeers were on top, and they killed everybody. The Spanish did take some casualties, that's for sure. There was actually 3 fights, but Massacre Cave is the only one that's documented, like, heavily. There was a fight before the Spanish got to the canyon of Canyon de Muerto, but it didn't stop them. And then they fought the Battle of Massacre Cave, and then when they were leaving the cave, the Navajos did a counterattack, but it didn't stop the Spanish. But when you're at Canyon de Muerto and Massacre Cave, if you understand ballistics, they were using flintlock muskets, and those only have an accurate range of 50 to 75 yards. It's only accurate if you're on those ridge lines above shooting down, not shooting up, as the legend says. So the Lancers drove them up, and then when they were up in the cave, that's when the Musketeers were picking them off. And that's Massacre Cave. It's a very hallowed ground, and our guide, we only spent 4 minutes there. And I have it documented on YouTube. Our guide talked for 4 minutes about Massacre Cave. He talked about skinwalkers for a little bit, how the Navajos...
He talked about skinwalkers?
He did, yeah.
That's very surprising.
Yeah, his name's Raymond, and he was raised inside of Canyon de Muerto. His grandfather was born and raised. He showed us the hogan that his grandfather was born in, and the hogan that he died in. So when Annette went, their culture is that if someone dies in a hogan, they just abandon it. And so we got to see the hogan that he was born in, and just a little ways over, we saw the hogan that he died in.
Wow.
And he talked about the Battle of Massacre Cave for 4 minutes. He talked about skinwalkers for a little bit, how the Navajo created skinwalkers and how they used them to fight the U.S. Army. First, they used them to fight the Spanish, and then the Mexicans, and then they used them to fight the U.S. Army led by Kit Carson, and then going on into the Apache Wars, and then into today, how they use them today. But
what did he say about how they created them?
They went to the medicine men and told them, like, you help us. You do a lot of things. Now we want you to do bad things. We want you to sneak into their camp and spy on them. We want you to jinx them. We want you to hex them. We want you to do these things.
Okay, so they compelled these people who are medicine people, who are operating on the spiritual, in the spiritual realm sort of thing, to do these, to take these actions.
That's right. And then it's developed into what we know today as skinwalkers, which is like demons in the night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Canyon de Muerto is a very beautiful place. It's got a lot of dark history, and there's ruins everywhere. When you're treading that ground, like, you're walking in the footsteps of all the people who have come before us, like all the ancient Puebloans. There's history looking down at you from every angle.
Yeah. And
there's caves up there that I promise you no white man's been inside of before, and probably never will be. But there's all kinds of artifacts and ruins and storehouses that the Navajo used during the Navajo Wars with Kit Carson, that are up there. It's just a beautiful place. I'm looking at the screen right now. I'm just like, it is gorgeous.
Yeah, I've got a picture of what you described as the Twin Towers. What is this place called?
That's called Fortress Rock.
Fortress Rock. It looks like there is no way that you could climb it. Like, I mean, if you had modern gear, you could climb up it, and I guess maybe a person without ropes could climb up it, but I don't know how you'd get down.
They actually had children climb that. There's little handholds cut into the rock, and women and children, like, women were carrying infants on their backs up those stone ladders going to the top of that to keep away from the cavalry.
That's incredible. If you're listening, you got to look this up. Fortress Rock, Canyon de Chelly, spelled Chelly. Wow.
It's an incredible place. And just look up Justin's Horse Rentals. He's only on Facebook. He doesn't advertise very well, but he's on Facebook, Justin's Horse Rentals, and very great guy, very awesome dude. He'll answer any questions you have, and he'll take you into anywhere you want to go. If you want to go 14 solid days on horseback through the entire canyon,
they'll do it?
They'll do it.
Oh, man.
I think it's $3,000.
That makes sense.
For 14 days on horseback, and you won't be able to see all the sights. He said in his entire life, he's only taken one person out on that tour, and it was a German guy. He spent 14 days, and he wasn't able to see all of Canyon de Chelly or Canyon de Muerto.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know how long these canyons are?
I don't know exactly how long by length, but I know that my guide when I hired him, Raymond, he took us on horseback, and I think it was a 6.5 hour trip. We had to walk down the ancient Navajo Trail of Twin Trail, the north one. When you're going down when you're approaching the trail, you would never know it's there. When you're at the base of the trail, looking back up, you would never know it's there. You have to know the exact location of it. And we led the horses down on foot because it's so treacherous, and it's always been that way. But it's a 6.5 hour trip. They drop you off. They get the horses set up for you. You go in, and then you go through Canyon de Muerto to Mummy Cave is the big ruin that they take you to. And then he stops, like the Navajos will stop and talk about different ruins and why they were there, why they were abandoned. And one ruin is called the Basket People, and one ruin is called like the Bow People. And there's different, there's the Pueblo people, which they call the people who lived on hilltops. And then there's the canyon, like the cliff dwellers. They identify them as two different peoples.
And what was the name of the cliff dwellers?
I don't know their name for it, but the Navajos call Chaco Canyon Chaco Hazan, which is a place of crying.
Wow. Well, this has been awesome, man. We ran through all my questions and far more than I would have guessed, but it's been fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Oh, man. I don't know. I've got
stories for days.
I got
Cool.
lots of stuff, and I'm always busy. I'm always doing exploration and adventures. Whenever I read about a new spot or a new location, I gain permission from the landowners, and if it's on the reservation, I gain permission from people who actually live there, and I get to go explore places. I'm always busy. I don't know. I'm pretty boring in our modern culture. I don't watch sports. I don't watch the news because it makes me mad.
Yeah.
But
well, that stuff's boring to me.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't. You know, I can get some stuff in sports, but like ball sports, I don't know. I can't put myself into the position of being like, oh, that's my team. I got to follow them. I got to track all their stuff.
Yeah.
That's foreign to me. Well, cool, man. Maybe you can come back, tell some more stories sometime.
Oh, I'd love it, man. And this is the spooky season. This is October
That's
2023. Right. So this is the Halloween spooky season.
Yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit more about Jerome and what's going on there. They're doing seances there or whatever.
Oh, yeah. 100,000 people died in Jerome over 76 mining copper. 3 fire. The entire town was destroyed by fire 4 different times. Whew. Yeah.
Wow.
It was known as the most wicked city in the West. And it actually had the highest number of brothels and syphilis cases throughout the entire United States per capita at one point. Yeah. Syphilis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Cody.
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Andrew. This was fun. I love it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.